I'm going to call the study session to order. Roll call, please.
The record will reflect that all members of council are present.
Do any members of council have a clarification for items on the consent calendar? Councilmember Daigle.
None.
None for me.
Mr. Selich.
I have none.
Councilmember Gardner.
None.
Mr. Petros.
None.
Mayor Pro Tem Hill.
None.
And I have none. Next item is the formation of Rule 20A Utility Undergrounding District on Balboa Boulevard. Mr. Hill.
Mr. Mayor, I need to recuse myself from this item as I have a property that is adjacent to this district.
Okay, thank you. Staff report, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. This is a continuation from our discussion back in March of this year, and this has to do with direction to staff to follow up to start the formation of Underground District 22. This is along Balboa Boulevard from West Coast Highway to 22nd Street. Just a brief history for those watching. We've had requests over the years to form a district on here to remove the poles along Balboa Boulevard for aesthetic reasons. A while back in 2008, Assessment District 69 was formed by the residents along Seashore Drive. They formed a district and removed the poles along there from basically 46th Street down to, Summit to 30th Street. That was funded by the property owners, and they paid for the undergrounding of the main line and the conversions. About 666 properties involved. Further on down the road, we had a citizen advisory panel put together back in fall and winter of 2011. They had two priorities coming out of that. The first one was the landscaping of Balboa Boulevard. Those improvements are currently designed. We're looking for our Caltrans permits and hopefully get that on the street and advertise and start construction in the next month or so. The second priority was the undergrounding of utilities along Balboa Boulevard. With that, we started looking into this. We've been accumulating what they call Rule 20A funds, and in March of 2013, we brought that to you, the council, and talked about possible districts in the future, timelines, balances, et cetera. And out of that, you asked us to go ahead and proceed on all four proposed districts, but make Balboa Boulevard your first priority. You wanted to look at using Rule 20A funds for that. You had us look into basically how we're going to convert the private connections. And so we want to come back tonight and talk a little bit more detail on that. Really quick, Rule 20A funds, that's funds provided through the Public Utility Commission to Southern California Edison. It's ratepayer money that's distributed on a formula basis to cities, and we basically get about $274,000 a year in these fundings. The funds are to be used on heavily trafficked areas with a lot of overhead utilities, also in scenic areas, major arterials and collectors. Those type of facilities are applicable. When you do Rule 20 projects, you can also pay for the service lateral if you choose, up to 100 feet. That's the lateral coming off the pole to the house. So with the formation of this district, we're looking at some goals. One of the goals, obviously, is to improve the aesthetic appearance of Balboa Boulevard. The other one we heard was to maximize the value of our Rule 20A funds so that we can, one, meet the goals of aesthetic improvements, and also, two, maintain some balance and move forward to try to underground the other three districts. We need to determine logical boundaries to meet the appearance goals and the funding goals. And then, again, we have to determine the owner participation level in this district. Just real quick, your municipal code 15-13-100. Residents, the connections between the house and the pole, per your ordinance, is the responsibility by the owner. So if you choose tonight, when we talk later, the owners can pay for this, and it's required by code. Or again, Rule 20A funds can be used in this case to pay for that conversion cost. Just a note on that, we just did the undergrounding district up in Santa Ana Heights where we used RDA money, and that paid for the main line, and then all the homeowners are responsible for their own connections on that. So with that, we wanted to show you two boundaries we came up with. There was some discussion last time, and option one above starts on roughly River Coast Highway there. And the blue boundary is what we're proposing, and the black dots are poles that would come out. And then you'll see down here by 47th Street, and so you'll see the black dots and the lines where this poles run now in the lines. And there's also white dots in here on poles that will be left. Along this area, Seashore Drive has all been underground, and that was AD 69. And again, we have option 2 down below, and the difference between the two options is really how far down the alleys we go. And this was a discussion we wanted to talk to you about. a little more information has come out. Edison originally said we could probably use Rule 28 to pay for this. They're kind of backsliding a little since we've drawn this PowerPoint and saying, well, probably not down all the way down the alleys, for instance, down this area here on between 46th and 47th, but surely towards Balboa Boulevard. So as I go through this, keep in mind option 1 is more in line with Edison. If we wanted to do option 2, and the real problem with option 1 is that we do leave these straggling poles. I'm looking for my cursor, excuse me. There it is. We leave these straggling poles with option 1. In some cases, 2, 3 poles. In other cases, 4 poles or more. So that's the options there. And as we go down further, option 1 continues down Balboa Boulevard, pretty tight along the district. Basically goes 1 pole in, kind of the same philosophy as we did on 80, 69, and others. 2 or 3 properties into it. It really removes any poles from the view of Balboa Boulevard unless you turn and look up the alleys. And then one other area we added to it, we originally, when we talked to you last, thought we'd come down to 32nd Street right here. That's the end of the residential. But we looked at this, and this area here really calls for maybe including 2. And we talked to Edison right at the tip between 22nd and 23rd. It's partly residential, it's partly commercial, it's got really visible poles, and we'd like to include that, and they're amenable to that. So we're going to see if we can include that. So both options would have that in it. Just a quick look so you can kind of see some of the pictures along here for the audience. This is actually around 47th. We're looking at the poles right there at the signal there. And again, our option 1 would take out this pole, this pole. We take out the first alley pole, and what that means is then the wires would be undergrounded back to the next pole, which is back here. Anytime we take out the pole, we'd have to either go back to the furthest pole back, or sometimes if it's too far, they might set another pole in the alley, maybe behind a house back here. As we move down the street, this is another view area we wanted to get some input on, Canal Street. Because it's very open and you can see it from Balboa Boulevard, we're proposing to take out this pole in the corner, go down further to this pole back here and take that down so that we'd underground, it'd come rise up on that far pole back there. We take the pole off on the corner, so you'd clear up all these wires you see in the forefront here and improve the aesthetics greatly of that corner. But we wouldn't go further down. It gets outside of the Rule 20 boundaries, and we'd have to do that another day down towards River Avenue. This is a typical alley that I mentioned, and what we'd be proposing here on option 1 would be to remove the pole, obviously, on Balboa Boulevard here. The second pole back we would take out, and that would remove all the wires down to the 3rd pole, and you'll see that here. That's that dot right there. We would take that out, and it'd rise back here, and these last 2 poles would stay in the alley. Now, hopefully we could work with Edison when we do such a district that they'd also clean up their existing system, maybe shorten some of the poles, cut off some of the old dead leads and stuff that have been cut over before, and just clean it up while we're there. But we would propose to leave a couple poles in the alley. Again, looking at 33rd Street here, going towards 32nd, and you'd really be losing the poles down in the, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my cursor again here. There it is. Going down Balboa Boulevard, you'd be taking off the wires that cross Balboa Boulevard out to the next pole, which is right down here. We'd downgrade there. So you'd lose all that overhead view as you travel down the street. And that would be typical as we go down this option. Finally, looking at 22nd and 23rd Street here, we wanted to kind of show you why we think we ought to include this. The arrows point to how we're looking on. We're looking at standing on 23rd here, looking down that alley, and you can see a lot of poles here. Standing out here towards the beach, looking at the bay, you can see those poles, and there's another one across the street that would come out, we'd propose. Same view from 22nd. Now, I don't know if we could get this pole. I'd like to. It's a service pole that goes to a commercial building. We could ask him on that. Worst case is we'd take these poles off here and we'd have a riser there, and when this guy redevelops at some point, the cost to remove that would be on him. So some of the design basics we'd like to go through. Potentially, between the options, option 1 has about 150 homes, option 2 has about 225 home connections that we'd have to deal with. The exact boundaries of the district we'd have to form out with Edison. When you go through this, you have to figure out where you're going to put down the guide wires and other things. So we'd include all boundaries along Balboa Boulevard. We'd work with the Edison company to create a logical boundary, the connection point, which exact pole, if we'd set a new pole or what, and then how we distribute the utilities and also the guying. The guying is the typical wires you see down and how you hold the end of the pole line up. Well, you have nothing else to support it but the weight of the wires. So looking at that and looking at the cost analysis, we broke this down, and this is where your council has been purchasing Rule 20A credits, and we've done some really good deals on that recently. So our balance currently right now is up to $1.7 million. You can mortgage out Rule 20A per the rules 5 years. So if we went from today and we took 5 years forward of our $274,000, we'd be about another $1.3 million, bringing us to a total of $3 million available today. If we go forward, because they said it's going to take us at least 3 years to complete this project, we put 3 more years of increment on there at $274,000. We end up with $3.9 million available in 2016 to do the project. I've broken down the two options for you there to kind of see the cost. Option one, total cost, we've estimated it's going to be about $4.4 million. That includes about 150 properties. Option two is about $5.5 million with 225 properties. The difference being is the private service laterals. We would look to possibly include that in the cost by the owner, and then we would pay the mainline cost. So you could see in option one, we could afford that. We'd be basically right at budget. If we wanted to do option two, we'd have to figure out some other funding strategy, maybe owner participation. Maybe we would have to wait a little longer, try to buy some more credits, or maybe try to, the owners could always come along and do a Rule 20B project on their own and pick up those last little bits. I put down at the bottom there just a note. Typical service connections run about $4,000 to connect. We see about $3,500, but I think safe for the residents to say you're going to be into it for about $4,000 for your connections if we do this district. So with that, the staff recommendation is move forward and go ahead and form the district based on boundary one. We think there's going to be some poles left in the alleys. We think we can probably clean them up, but it's probably it would delay our implementation of this, and it's a big cost to bear to go up those alleys and pick up those poles, and you don't see them as much as one would think. You just have to look up the alleys. The other one would be to recommend, as we've done in the past, is to have the residents, that'd be about 150 homes, pick up the cost of their private connections on this. If you choose to do this, what you're going to see next is that we need to work with Edison on the exact boundary. We need to get down and look at each pole, figure out exactly what's going to be led. We develop a boundary map, basically. With that, we send out a notice that we're going to have a public hearing on this, and we need to hold a public hearing for all the affected residents because there would be a cost to them in some cases if you choose to have them pay for their service laterals.
Is that a hearing or a vote?
It's actually a public hearing, and it's a vote for you folks. You have the right per your ordinance to go ahead and adopt the district. It's a little different, like your Rule 20B projects you've seen is where the residents tax themselves, and they typically have a vote on that. On the Rule 20A, I believe it's your discretionary authority to set up that district, and again, include the laterals if you want. If I have that right.
Is those annual payments from Edison a sure thing?
They've been sure for the last 20-something years, but I can never guarantee the future. They go up and down. Right now, our last one was $274,000. We've seen lower. It depends what the PUC does on that. It's not a whole lot of money, but I'm guessing we'll see it the next couple of years. I haven't heard anything that would change that. Again, holding that public hearing, then we'd go ahead and form the underground district and start the design of the project. And then in the meantime, we would keep looking for more 20A funds to augment this and look for further districts. Just a time schedule if you want to do this. Option 1 and 2 kind of lays out a little differently, just basically on the pole removals. But we'd hope to get the public hearing started in October. I actually think that's probably aggressive. We might be looking at more November, and depending on the holidays. But we'd shoot for an October hearing to get that map formed, to get it back to you. Start the design in spring of 2015. Move through the underground construction, and then we have the private conversions. And again, it takes a little longer with the more homes on the other one to delay that option 2 a little longer. So with option 1, we're hoping to be done about fall 2017. Option 2 about spring 2018. With that, I'll turn over to any questions you have or thoughts you might have on this.
Questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Once the undergrounding is done, it's going to go part way down the alley in all cases. And will the project include repaving costs in the alley? And does that mean the alley gets, if it's concrete, it gets completely repaved and so forth? What about that?
Typically, we've had to do on our other projects is the city picks up the cost of the portion of the repaving other than the utility trench. We have been going through and doing concrete alleys behind all others. Typically on our Rule 20B projects, we've done sewer and lateral work at the same time. We could do probably the entrances. I don't know if it would be merit. We'd have to look in it further if we'd want to do the whole alley, because you'd have a lot. Are we going to go in and do water lines at this time, sewer lines? That'd be a much bigger project, but we truly want to probably catch the driver approaches off Balboa and maybe in a couple of houses.
So at a minimum, there would be a strip of repaving. If the alley was concrete and you got a 3-foot wide trench required for the undergrounding of the utilities, however far into the alley they go, that 3-foot wide strip, would that be repaved with concrete or asphalt?
The most efficient would be to put it back in what it is. If it's an asphalt alley, you'd want to put it back in asphalt.
Right.
It'd look kind of funny. If it's concrete, we'd put it back. On concrete alleys, typically we put in full panel replacement, so you're probably looking at a half of the alley would go in. Now, we could look at that as we go through the design, and if the alleys are in poor shape, we could supplement it with maybe some general fund, road fund money or something to do the other half. It wouldn't be a whole lot of money, actually, to do a few houses in.
So, we're going to a lot of trouble and expense to improve the aesthetics. We wouldn't want the alleys to look like hell after we're done. So, I'd encourage that you have a look at that. Okay, and typically in the past, I know you mentioned Santa Ana Heights, but typically in the past in Rule 20A, we have required the private homeowners to pick up the lateral connection cost. Is that right? Have we made any exceptions to that, or?
To be honest, I'm not aware what you've done, because the last Rule 28 project was many, many years ago.
Okay.
The one in Santa Ana Heights was RDA money.
Right.
We treated it like a Rule 28 because we had the funding. We did require the residents to pay for their own undergrounding. And up there, the laterals are a lot further. The houses are set back. So my memory serves me right. It's about $7,000 average to connect up there. On the Rule 20B projects, the homeowners have paid for the underground and the main line and their own service connections.
Right.
And we thought maybe bringing some equity into this would make sense, because they've benefited from all the undergrounding that's gone around them.
Well, and I would support that as a matter of equities, that, the private homeowner would have to pay for the lateral connection rather than try to include that in the Rule 20A money. So I guess from my perspective, I think more than likely option one is the right way to go, but with the caveat that we try to expand it as well as possible with Rule 20A money, get Edison to agree to as much of a liberal interpretation of that as we can.
Questions, Mr. Petras?
Yeah, Dave, on option 2, the area picks up the entire alleyway to Seashore all the way to 32nd Street. But then east of 32nd Street, both options 1 and 2 are the same and don't go beyond the alley. Was there a reason why you didn't pick up going down the alley east of 32nd Street on option 2?
I'm trying to get my bearing here. East of 32nd Street.
Look at this picture. In fact, they're the same. They're the same
two right
coverage
here.
east of 32nd. You're not picking up the poles in the alley here.
No, correct. And there was a thought on this. Again, maybe an equity issue. Most folks along Seashore have taken upon themselves to underground both sides. This, and going down the peninsula the other way towards 10th Street and others, this is typical. This is one area where the residents have not done a Rule 20B project, and it not only comes down the alleys, but there's a T. You can see the poles go this way. Mm-hmm. And typically when they would do a Rule 20B project, they would pick this pole up and they'd come down and probably pick up this much of it. For us to take, I don't even think 20A would apply to that. Too, you'd have an equity issue to go way back and try to pick these up, I think. It probably wouldn't be something I would suggest.
Is there, are there any other opportunities for outside funds? I just tried to do an OTS grant search. I was thinking fire accident. I used to, here's one for the books. I used to drive a beer truck for Coors, and trying to come down these alleys to serve the stores and restaurants was really tough. I would imagine that'd be the same for a fire truck. Is there anything that we can look forward to, for competitive grants, OTS grants, any other things to pick up some of these, to not necessarily these, but the option 2 west of 32nd?
I don't know of any funding particularly we could look. I've never seen any other funding. OTS maybe. We have the same problem with trash trucks and other utilities. It's very narrow alleys, and we try to get those poles out of the way. It'd be nice not to have them there, but it'd be a far shot to maybe get some money for it, other than maybe general fund money. You could also encourage the residents to take on 20B projects. Once the main lines are down and there's just a couple poles left, it might be economical for each alley to take it on. If you have a high association of probably property owners, they'll want to do that. If you have a lot of absentee property owners, they might not have the motivation.
Right. And then finally, thank you, Mayor. I couldn't help but notice that you said that the landscaping improvements along Balboa are in the pipeline for starting next month.
Well, we'd like to advertise next month. We are currently hung up in Caltrans. We're pushing them to get our permit. The design's done. Once we get our permit on that, we're actually thinking maybe we can advertise without it, just go, because it's the permit for Caltrans, as you know, is on Coast Highway, right there near Jack in the Box. I was talking to the design staff today and giving them the encouragement, maybe we just advertise and go with it, and we see what happens with Caltrans. But we're ready to go, basically, on the plans.
I would strongly encourage you to pursue that path. Thank you.
Mr. Ursulich.
Where do we get the authority to require people to do the service hookups under this? When they're under a 20B, they actually, by majority vote the district in. But is it in the law that if we adopt this underground district, they're mandated to do the hookup? And then what do we do if someone doesn't have the money or refuses to do the hookup? Because you can't take everything down till the last person hooks up.
Good question. I'm sorry, Aaron.
Just briefly, we have a municipal code provision which provides that once an underground utility district is established, the property owners have the duty to basically connect to that system. Typically what happens, and for what I've seen in the past, is most of the owners will go ahead and do that and contract to get it done. You always have a few that don't, so then you end up going to court, basically getting an order to install it yourself, and then the municipal code basically provides that you can lien it against them, against the property. So that's usually how it's handled.
Questions? Councilor Gardner.
Yeah, that does seem to me a little odd, because I may be somebody who's lived there and I just don't care about the about the power pole, and all of a sudden I'm told I'm going to spend $4,000 or $5,000, or else I'm not going to have any electricity. But another question, looking at the difference between option A, or first option and the second option, is there, or would the timing work that if we went with the option one, because that's what we had the 20A funds for, that those people in that area could form a 20B and so to take out the others that would be, say, included if we expanded the area, and where there might be some economies just because the two projects could then work together? Is there any possibility of that?
There's possible. Well, I should say, we talked about this. It's a little complex. It'll probably add to the schedule time, because the need to get the homeowners together, have the vote, to coordinate the two. And we feel maybe some people will be on it, some won't. You might go alley by alley. The answer is yes, it is probably possible. It does add a degree of complexity to this. It might be wise, and I'm just suggesting, to maybe do the Rule 28 district and encourage them to start forming these districts on their own. And you may have one alley that says they're going and another alley that says they don't, because there'll be 2 or 3 poles left.
Don't we have some kind of minimum? I mean, we can't go house by house. I can form my own district, and you will underground that pole. Isn't there a certain size or something that we have mandated in the past as far as some logic to how a district is formed?
I don't think there's a size limit. In fact, I was talking to the district guy down in Laguna Beach, and they do as little as 2 poles. Some people just, 2 guys get together and do it. So if it's easier to get the vote. You get 2 people that want to do it.
All right, thank you.
Questions? All right, do you have what you need, Dave?
Yeah, we do. We'll go ahead and package this up, it sounds like, follow with option 1. I hear. Did I get a consensus you want to go ahead and have the residents pay for it as the municipal code calls out? Okay, and we'll bring that back as soon as we can once Edison works with us to get the district boundary set up.
Okay, very good.
But Dave, how can we ensure that they're not just surprised by a bill, that we get out in front of them first and let them know that this is something that is on the horizon, we're very interested in pursuing, and we are looking forward to their participation?
We surely will communicate with them, and we can also flag them all to the public hearing. We'll have to hold a hearing. We'll notice all of them to make sure they are aware of it, and we'll put in the notice that it's a potential cost.
Let's just be very proactive with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me open this up to public comment. Is there anyone in the public who'd like to speak on this matter? Please come forward.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mayor Curry and council members. I actually live in this district, and I want to thank staff for working on this. I just wanted to say that with the option one, I did drive the whole area from Coast Highway all the way down, and this is the only section on Balboa that still has poles up. There are places further down Balboa, like in front of Newport L, where the poles are gone from Balboa, but if you look towards the bay, you'll see the poles in the alley still. So this won't be the only place that they just used 28 funds to take poles off of the main street and left poles, 2 properties in. I'm not going to quibble so much about the residents paying the connect fees. I know there's some undergrounding that's being done on Superior Avenue right now in front of Newport Crest condos. I don't know if those residents are being charged for the lateral connections into their association or not. I do know that I talked to property owners on Newport Boulevard where undergrounding was done. These are not residents, but businesses, and they said they didn't have to pay anything to connect to their properties. But I see it's $600,000 in the budget, and I don't want to shrink the pool of funds, so I'm somebody that will pay $4,000. I do have people in my family and friends who were part of the assessment 69, and they paid a lot more than $4,000, and it will improve it in the area. I lived at the same location for 25 years. I have a lot of friends who live in the area that are older, retired. I think most of them will have the wherewithal to come up with the approximately $4,000, especially as Councilman Head knows, oftentimes our power supply goes down 3 or 4 times a year for like 12 or 16 hours at a time. Any new infrastructure in there to get the Edison improved is a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak on this matter? Please come forward.
Thank you, Mayor Curry and members of the council. My name is Jim Mosier. I had 2 questions. First, in the areas of the alleys where the homeowners choose not to participate and the poles are still there, I was just curious how the wires make the transition from underground to above ground. Do they go up new conduits or something that are put on the side of the poles? The second question is, as I understood the presentation, this is going to be using up all of the current fund, and I didn't quite understand mortgaging 5 years into the future and also dedicating the funds coming in for the next 3 years. And with 3 other districts of lower priority waiting in the wings, I was just curious, the approval of this, how far off in the future will that put the next district that might be eligible for such a project? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers who'd like to speak on this matter? Please come forward. All right, seeing none, I'm going to close it, bring it back to the council. Thank you very much. The next item is the AT&T UVerse presentation.
Mr. Mayor, on this item, I do not receive income from AT&T. I do receive income from Verizon Wireless, and the use of the public right-of-way, there's, I don't know, probably a half dozen issues that are contentious, so I will be recusing myself.
Okay, thank you. And I am a stockholder in AT&T, and so I'm going to also recuse myself. Take the call.
Thank you, council members. Pat Thomas is here tonight, our city engineer deputy director, and he'll be introducing the subject.
Thank you, Dave. Yes, as the mayor mentioned, this study session item is to discuss the deployment of the AT&T UVerse system. That's a relatively new system that AT&T provides to provide video, internet, and telephone services through a fiber optic network to the home. The main issue that we've identified is that the need for this system will involve installation of above-ground cabinets in order to be able to implement the fiber system and connect to the existing AT&T copper system. And we do have some pictures of what those cabinets look like and dimensions to show you, as well as approximate locations of where they would be located in the city. We have a representative from AT&T here to discuss the system with you. John Heffernan from AT&T is here, and then we also, subsequent to that, we have the pictures of the equipment and approximate locations of where they would be going, so we can discuss that and also what the potential alternatives may be for the system. So with that, I'll introduce John Heffernan from AT&T.
Okay, thank you. well, in his absence, Mr. Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem, council members, and city staff, as you heard, I'm John Heffernan, Director of External Affairs at AT&T, and I have some folks from AT&T with me to answer some technical or specific questions. But as you see on the agenda, we appreciate the opportunity to make the presentation today, and it's obvious by the way this is written up that there are many residents and communities around the county that are sometimes curious as to why their TV and internet option is just their cable company. So AT&T over the last 6 years has upgraded our fiber network to provide an option for those residents. So you'll see on the PowerPoint slides, what we're planning to do is to upgrade our fiber network. It's going to push fiber further out into the neighborhoods and bring Newport Beach onto a IP platform. So this Internet Protocol technology means that the television, computers, home phones, and in fact your wireless devices can be integrated to work together. There's lots of features, additional control, and a lot of personalization that comes as a result. Specifically, AT&T UVerse TV is the only 100% Internet Protocol-based TV service offered by a national provider, making it dynamic and feature-rich. What that means for your city, they're going to be able to watch TV, surf the Internet, and talk on their voice over IP voice option for those eligible residents, and the computers, cell phones, and TVs will work better because they're working together. On the UVerse TV product, it's digital TV fed by that fiber footprint. We have over 40 HD channels, a whole home HD DVR where what's recorded on that DVR can be viewed in any bedroom, and we have what's new to the market is a wireless set-top box or receiver where, for example, if you want to watch TV or a game out on the backyard patio, you can take that set-top box outside with your flat-screen TV and enjoy TV outside. In terms of the Internet, amazing speeds up to 45 megs downstream, so things are happening fast. The slide in front of you shows 10 megs, but it has in fact increased over the last 2 years to 45 megs downstream. The real exciting one is the last one there is our UVerse Voice product. It's digital UVerse Voice, and it's going to integrate what you watch on TV or what you experience on your computer on the Internet. For example, with the voice over IP UVerse Voice product, you could be watching TV, receive a phone call, and you'd have a caller ID box show up in the bottom corner of your TV. You could have a message waiting indicator show up in the bottom portion of your TV. So total integration between the television, the Internet access, and your voice applications. What we'd like to do is bring this fiber network upgrade to Newport Beach so that we can connect Newport Beach on the same fiber platform as the rest of Orange County. We're in over 80% of the cities in Orange County, up and down the state, in counties and cities, well over 150 at this point. Regarding the UVerse Internet, what you see there is a listing of what's provided. There's a wireless router that provides wireless home networking, so it's kind of like a gateway. There's virtually unlimited email storage, on-the-go access to our AT&T's Wi-Fi network at no extra charge. So you've seen the signs at the Starbucks or McDonald's where you're automatically connected to those at no charge. And for those folks who get the UVerse high-speed Internet, included in that product is antivirus, anti-spyware, firewall protection, and parental controls. Now, like I said, we launched it about 6 years ago in 2007, and we were the old phone company, but not anymore. We're a technology company. We got into the TV business, and by 2010, we had won the top rating for J.D. Powers and Associates for residential television service in 3 of the 4 markets across the country. So currently, we're over 9 million high-speed Internet customers. We have 5 million UVerse TV customers and 3.5 million UVerse voice connections. The next 2 bullets speak to how many of our customers that order UVerse get the TV and the internet. So 9 out of 10 customers, over 90%, are getting that double play, as we call it. 70% of them get either the triple play, meaning TV, internet, or the UVerse voice option. And then the quad play, that's the fourth service you can have combined with your billing and enjoy discounts if you include your wireless service with us. So it's a great option to have one provider, one bill for TV, internet, your home phone, as well as your Wi-Fi. Now, how is this IPTV or Internet Protocol TV different from cable? So instead of the traditional cable or satellite TV, we have improved technology. Gives you, like I said earlier, more flexibility, more creativity within the network. So think of, in a traditional cable setting, that coax cable, it is using the entire pipe to send the content for all channels all the time. Within an IPTV framework, the only signal that's being sent to your receiver and to your TV is the channel you've selected. So it allows all of that available bandwidth for additional personalization and additional customization. With IP, the UVerse receivers in your home, no matter what room they are connected to the high-speed home network. So that lets you watch shows recorded, like I said earlier. It could be recorded on the DVR. You don't have to battle with the rest of the family about who was watching which recorded show. You could watch those recorded shows on any connected TV in the house. In addition, kids, grandkids can connect their gaming consoles. So whether it's PlayStation or Xbox, they can connect directly into the back of that set-top box and enjoy that high-speed internet. I mentioned the wireless receiver, so this speaks directly to it. It's really how we allow this new technology to go wireless, so you can take it. It's just like watching TV on a laptop or a tablet. You get to take that wireless receiver with you where you want to go. So how do we get the signal to the neighborhoods? Well, this graphic will tell you that basically the work that we've been about is increasing internet speeds. You remember the old dial-up days and listening for the beep, 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 handshake, and then we pushed fiber out a little further into the neighborhoods, and that's what brought DSL. Well, now, pushing it even further into the neighborhoods, into these fiber-fed cabinets, we can now transmit a video signal over that last 3,000 to 5,000 feet of existing copper infrastructure. So that allows us to get into the neighborhoods without trenching to every home. So we get the content from the providers like the Channel 7s and the Fox News and the CNNs and Channel 4s in our video hub offices. They're then directed to our local video hub offices, which pass through our central offices out into this cabinet, this new cabinet that'll be street side, and we call it the node. It's basically a cabinet housing computer electronics and a fiber network. Now, if it's a new community, we can trench and go directly to every home. Say a new neighborhood comes up in Newport Coast. We can work with the developer and the city and trench to each home. That's what we call FTTP, or fiber to the premises. But for mature communities like Newport Beach, we don't want to trench through front yards and through flower beds and lawns. We want to use the existing copper network that's there. So we take a new fiber-fed cabinet in that neighborhood and connect it to the existing cabinet that's there that houses the copper, and that video signal rides over that copper infrastructure, what we call fiber to the node technology. So a lot less invasive, and we work with the city staff to place them where it's appropriate. So the nice thing, like I said, about UVerse is we're not trenching to everyone's front door. We're taking advantage of the existing facilities that are out there. We place a new cabinet, what we call a VRAD, Video Relay Access Point, in the neighborhoods close to one of the existing cabinets, so there's minimal trenching. We're just trenching from the power pickup to the new cabinet and from the new cabinet to the existing cabinet. So typically minimal trenching. We're not going across streets in most cases. And we've done a great job over the years of understanding the concerns from communities. So we'll place them where the municipalities ask us to, and we're open to discussing screening options should that be needed.
Mr. Heffernan?
Yes.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes.
When you are making the last connection, the copper connection, let's call it, are those boxes, cabinets placed in areas where you have known customers, or are you making the connection to all homes regardless of whether you have a customer base in that neighborhood or not?
Well, Newport Beach is part of our, what we call our wireline footprint. So our network is connected to every residence in Newport Beach for dial tone, and has been for over 100 years.
So I don't want this service, but I still would be connected to it for potentially in the future.
Well, only if you order it.
But the physical connection is made.
The connection is made at the street side cabinet, but it's until you pick up the phone, call us and say, hey, I'd like UVerse, the technician goes out and then connects the fiber to the copper and delivers it to your home.
So to implement this, you're saying you're going to implement it over all of Newport Beach regardless of how many subscriptions you have at the inception?
Well, that is based on our work with the city staff, Public Works and City Manager's Office. You know, those, sometimes there are space limitations, sometimes there are technological limitations. If the existing copper infrastructure has degraded for some reason because of, the years of weather or settling, where the integrity of that copper network can't carry that video signal the last 3,000 feet, that neighborhood or that existing cabinet might not make the list of upgradable options. I brought my engineer experts. I just wanted to check with them.
He better not be that young man with the tie and the glasses.
So speaking of what's going on in the neighborhoods, we communicate with the folks out there, and we let them know via a letter that we're coming to upgrade the network. We're bringing fiber to their community, and they're going to have choice and competition and some great bundled pricing. Just before construction begins, they get a door hanger to let them know. So we communicate with the neighbors. That's how we interact with the neighborhoods. And then the interaction that we have after permitting happens is with the city treasurer's office, and that's a 5% franchise fee that comes to the city. So it's 5% of the gross revenues off of our video billing goes to the city, just like it would for your cable company, and 1% goes to the city to support the PEG channel. So AT&T will carry the city's PEG channels on UVerse. We get a request from the city. We provision at our cost a T1 to this building probably, and then it's carried on channel 99 where there's a drop-down menu where, and this is the nice thing compared to our competition, customers, your residents, can view any PEG channel from our video office footprint. So basically all of Orange County and some of the southern part of LA County. So we would provide the PEG channel for your residents. Like I said, we've learned a lot. Early on, 6 years ago, we thought, hey, you know what? We need to upgrade our network. We just got to go tell the city what we're going to do. Well, as you can see by example today, we're here informing, having discussions, talking about best placement for these new cabinets, and maybe there's concerns about the placement of in one neighborhood versus another, and we'll back away from ones that really cause concern and push forward on those ones that are easily placed. So we've done a lot of work and shown a lot of flexibility in terms of screening. We'll draw plants in on, based on a case-by-case basis as needed. So it's interesting that at Newport Beach, one of the kind of pristine communities in South Orange County, is one of the remaining cities yet to get UVerse, and I'm looking forward to working with city staff to bring UVerse to your residents. And we're happy to take any questions. I have a product specialist, I have a network engineer, I have our government liaison who handles permitting. So any questions that come up, we're happy to entertain those, and we have some pictures of what those cabinets look like.
Any further presentation by staff?
Yes, we have just a few more minutes here.
The issue that we identified early on when we first met with AT&T is their proposal to implement the system required the installation of these above-ground facilities, these VRAD cabinets, as Mr. Heffernan mentioned. And our municipal code has a section that limits the use of above-ground facilities in as many cases as possible and requires the installation of underground vaults if at all possible. And Mr. Heffernan can address that in terms of their ability to use the underground vaults. But I did want to show you some pictures of what these VRAD cabinets look like and talk about the size, dimension of them, and also kind of a map of the city that shows where they would potentially be located. This is a picture of one of the cabinets. On the left is the VRAD cabinet. And I've got another slide here that shows the actual size. They're approximately 4 feet high by 4 feet wide by 2 feet deep. And it's sitting next to, I believe that's one of your existing SAI facilities there that it would be interfacing with.
It doesn't look like one of.
That's an Edison facility.
Yeah.
The intent is that these new VRAD cabinets would be located somewhere in the proximity of their existing, what they call SAI cabinets, which are the facilities where the copper lines go into the home. So they would bring the fiber into the VRAD cabinets, connect those into the cabinets that have the copper system that then goes into the homes.
So how would you screen a cabinet like that that's out in the open, or would you just leave it like it is?
Well, on a site-by-site basis, if the request came that we were asked to put a plant in front of it, we would definitely entertain that. Sometimes on main arterials where there's a setback or there's existing above-ground facilities, it fits in.
At this particular location, it wouldn't necessarily have to be located right next to the transformer there. It could be set somewhere else along the street so that it would be potentially in a better location that it could be screened.
No, but it's a good example of where there may not be other opportunities to locate it, and it's out clearly visible. I'm just curious what options there would be to screen it. Like a plant sounds like something I'd find on my dining room table. What about like a trellis with some vines growing around it, or do you do things like that?
Yeah, like I said, on a site-by-site or case-by-case basis, we work with cities up and down the state and look at options. Like was stated, we have about a 150-foot range on either side of the existing copper cabinet to place it. So if this site was a concern, we could, say for example, place it on the back side of that slope where it wasn't visible. This photo was brought forward as an example. So if there was concern, whether it was aesthetics or line of sight, we wouldn't place it there.
This cabinet
I'm kind of dodging my question, because my question is, would you completely screen that cabinet if it was in a location like that and there was no other place to put it?
Have we done that before? Have we done screenings?
Yeah, we can screen. Typically screen a cabinet if it's in a landscape area, because you have to keep in mind we need the irrigation system to keep the plants alive. So we typically will screen it maybe like 3 tall plants in front and 2 to the side, because we always have to open the doors to service if we have to get back into the cabinet. So one side will not be screened, but we can do like a U shape, and it all depends where the cabinet is located. If it's in a concrete or asphalt, in a sidewalk where there is no landscape whatsoever, then that would probably not be possible, because we don't have the water to keep them alive. So, but yes, landscape, it's something that we can definitely work with the city. And if the location is not a good location, we can probably move a little further into a parkway area, or already probably there's a area that has really nice bushes around it. We can hide it in between there. It's again, like John said, a case-by-case basis. We can definitely look at all the options.
This
cabinet, I
cabinet.
I just have one other question.
Are you through yet, Councilman? Well, please continue.
Thank you. Well, while we're on this picture, I just thought it would be easier. What is the size of that cabinet compared to a typical traffic control cabinet? I just want to get a perspective.
Yeah, it's pretty similar. Our traffic signal cabinets are maybe a little bit taller, but about the same width and depth. This cabinet is 4 feet tall, 4 feet wide, and about 2 feet deep.
And how many, we have quite a few of those around town, don't we?
Yeah.
They're a little smaller than the traffic control.
This is that same cabinet, just a view from the front, so it just gives you a little bit of different perspective of what it looks like. And then this is the schematic of the actual cabinet itself. It shows the dimensions of it, and they do have a couple of different colors. So if it helped to put a green cabinet versus a beige cabinet, they can use some different colors to try to blend it in with the landscape.
And we typically will match the color of the existing copper cabinet. So if the copper cabinet that's out on the sidewalk area now or parkway is tan, the new cabinet will be tan, or vice versa.
There is another alternative cabinet that could be used with the system, and you may want to address this also, but I believe that these alternative cabinets are only when it is in the right next to the existing SAI, to use the smaller VSIM cabinets.
Actually, it has to be connected with a what we call a CEV, a controlled environmental vault. It could be several thousand feet away.
Sorry, it does help to speak in the mic. The folks at home can't hear you. So.
Okay, so it could be quite a distance from one of those CEVs or another VRAD cabinet in the case of the VSIM that you're looking at there, as long as there is an underground conduit path to reach it. So it just depends. We don't find we've had a lot of opportunities to place these, a few, just because those type of situations don't present themselves very often.
So the majority of the cabinets would be the 4 foot wide by 4 foot, the VRAD cabinets.
Correct.
Yeah. And then the last picture here is our city boundary, and what you see on there, all the red dots on there are the existing what they call service area interfaces, and the new VRAD cabinets are the ones that would need to be located within the 100 to 150 feet from the existing SAIs. So this would be kind of the coverage area. I believe there's about 80 of the existing SAIs that you see here on this map. We did go out with AT&T representatives and looked at a few of the representative locations and looked at and moving where the VRAD cabinet would be located to be in the most least obtrusive location and where it can be screened in the best location possible. But again, the conflict is that the code does not allow for these above ground facilities unless it's deemed that they're the only feasible option. And Mr. Hefner may want to address that in terms of the ability to put these cabinets in an underground vault situation.
Yeah, I'm going to start, and then I'll hand it off to our resident engineer expert. But we do have an undergrounding option, but it's as Jim referred to, a controlled environmental vault. So imagine a hole about 20 feet deep, like the size of a small living room, with concrete walls. We place the equipment down in that vault, and then seal it. But we have to have a vent access point up top that actually is about the larger cubic feet when compared to the VRAD. So we do have an undergrounding option. There are some existing VRADs. Some existing controlled environmental vaults in the Newport area. We would take advantage of those if possible. But because what's inside that cabinet are computer electronics and computer components, it has to be above ground to stay cooled. And also, a very practical matter, the technicians need to pull up their van, park, set out their cones, and access the network to be able to provision orders.
What are the dimensions of this underground vault again?
Well, do you want to talk to that?
Yeah. Typically, they're about 16 feet in length and about 7 feet in width, and they're about 80% underground. So you still have a substantial portion of the structure is above ground, in fact, much larger than one of these VRAD cabinets. So where there's an opportunity where we have existing ones, we have placed the electronics equipment, VRAD equipment, in these.
Okay. Can you please go back to the dimensions of the VRAD cabinet? Right there, right? This is 52 inches, we're saying, in width, and you need 16 feet to house 50 inches?
Well, yeah, let me speak to that. The CEV houses all the telecommunications equipment for voice, for data, that covers a wide area, much wider area than one of these would. What we've been able to do with some of the existing space in the CV is place some of the internal equipment and what you see here in those. But we were just adding to an existing vault that we had, where we find those. And you don't find a lot of those because they cover such a wide area of service.
So what is the vault requirement for that?
This here does not require a vault. This is all above ground.
No, if I wanted to put that underground.
Then one of those large CEV cabinets would have to be installed.
So there's nothing that just houses this underground?
Correct. This needs to be underground, and I just want to add to something John said, for basically the same reason that our existing cabinets need to be above ground. John did kind of mention that for technician access.
Can you go back to the picture that you had of the existing one? This looks quite different than the picture you had in your presentation of one. Can you go back to that presentation and look at that one? This one I would define as looking like a military installation. And the other one, unless I was imagining something different, it looked like a sleek design, high-tech piece of furniture. That one.
It's essentially, that is the exact same cabinet.
It is?
Might be a different color.
Amazing what paint does. Yeah. I have a couple of general questions, if you would allow. Is this system compatible with private phone switches?
I'm not sure I know what you mean by private phone switches.
A lot of our houses in Newport Beach have phone switches in them, allowing for dialing from room to room and multiple lines and these types of things.
The installation of this equipment does not interfere or intersect with any of the existing services until somebody requests service. So any existing services within the area are unaffected by the placement of this equipment.
All right, I said that was not my question.
Right,
my question is, is this new service compatible with private phone switches?
So the three options, the product options that I mentioned, the TV, internet, and the voice option, are all separate products. So a customer could order just TV and internet and leave their existing voice service as is. So it is compatible with existing switches.
Okay. I recognize that, I must receive literally 3 ads a week from AT&T to bundle, and it's impossible in our house to do that because we have a phone switch. And I know a lot of our neighbors have phone switches. And so what I hear you saying is you could buy pieces of it, but you could not integrate all of it together.
We'll play.
In certain homes that do have an actual home switch, you do have the option of leaving your basic wireline service. So if you wanted to, you can leave the existing phones, the existing wireline that you already have using the old telecom systems, and only bring in the internet and the actual TV service. So it wouldn't, you wouldn't necessarily bundle it in the sense that you wouldn't receive them all in one bill. But yes, we would be able to give you the services that we weren't interfering with what was already existing.
All right. Is there a degradation when you transfer to copper versus going straight to a house with fiber?
That question
Is there a
comes in.
degradation of the quality or the speed of the service by transferring the last section by copper versus cable all the way?
Now, when you're looking at your internet-based service, yes, you'll see a difference in your speed. When you're talking about a phone switch, though, we're talking about an actual phone system when we're talking. If you use your wireline, it's not going to affect you in that sense. But if we could take your existing DSL line and transfer it from copper to fiber, yes, you will see an increase in your internet speeds.
And do AT&T services Costa Mesa. Do you provide this service in Costa Mesa?
As of right now, there are certain areas within the 9266 and 9267 areas that we do actually provide service to. There's also services in 92663 that also has AT&T Uber services. The only areas right now within Newport Beach that have not allowed us to bring the TV service would be mainly the 92661, 92662, and the 92660. In some areas, they've allowed us to where we can bring in the internet and the phone service, but the TV service hasn't quite been available, only because we haven't ran the fiber cabling within, like they were speaking earlier, that 3,000 feet. If we can't provide the service within a certain distance, then the service wouldn't be in a high quality, and that's another reason why we don't allow it in certain areas.
Did anyone understand that? All right.
It's
Any
all
other
based on the
questions?
distance from the node to the actual, like, residence, like, home.
Any other questions of council?
I just gathered, though, that, I mean, obviously after what happened with Time Warner, we got a lot of emails about why can't we have a different service. But if we were to proceed with this, we would have to change our ordinance. Is that what I'm gathering?
Well, and not necessarily. The ordinance does allow for above-ground facilities if it's deemed that underground is not feasible. So I guess we're trying to make a determination as to whether or not it's feasible. One of the things that we wanted to get some input from the council on is, would you, if you were to agree to allow these facilities to be installed, should we require that they all be screened, that there be some level of screening or landscaping at every location? We're trying to determine, what would be the requirements if we are going to allow these to be installed above ground.
Well, I just thought that the first example, the one that Ed wanted to screen, I could have cared less. I mean, it was just, there's already something there. It's pretty barren. And we've been able to live with it without any complaints. I would plunk one down there and not even think twice about it. But I think of a lot of parkways where we have a cabinet already, and I could see that if there were two cabinets, there might be much more demand for some aesthetics that we don't have now.
Question I would have of staff is, how does this interface with our asphalt moratorium, trenching moratorium that we have as we resurface our that moratorium is for many years, is it not?
Yes, typically it's for 5 years after a street is paved. There's no trenching allowed, and I believe in many cases these facilities can be installed without the need to even install additional conduit, that they'd be installing the fiber in existing conduit in the ground. So we would still honor the moratorium as far as the no trenching in streets that have been paved.
It seems to me that based on the description of the size of a climate-controlled underground vault, undergrounding is infeasible with this. I mean, there would be very few locations where we could put an underground vault that size, probably nowhere on the peninsula. So it seems to me then there wouldn't be any problem meeting the requirement of the ordinance because it's infeasible. But from my perspective, I would still want to require a maximum amount of screening. It doesn't have to be live plants. There could be architectural screening or that sort of thing. Anywhere where the city deems that it's appropriate, we'd want to require that, I think.
Yeah, we would certainly require the screening in every appropriate location, as well as locating the cabinets in the least visually impacting locations. Nothing that's on a side yard if possible, in between properties if possible, anywhere where they would be in the least visual impactful location.
And I would not want that to be at the option of AT&T. This would have to be something that would be controlled by the city.
Absolutely.
I'm not certain. I mean, to me, I have a whole different mentality on it. I mean, if you're talking about 80 or 90 of these around the city, I mean, they're obviously designed with the engineering aspect in mind. They need to be designed with the Apple mentality in mind. I mean, it needs to be just a sleek, clean, nice-looking cabinet. And, that's the impression I get out of your slide, but it's certainly not the impression I get out of the other slide. And you're doing these all over the country. Why haven't you had them superbly designed so that they become a nice piece of furniture.
Yeah, I understand the comment and concern. The example on the slide that's showing is, I would say, more representative of the more recent installations. We were searching for an example of an installation that would give a little bit of distance from where the photo was taken. So with the slope in the background or the golf cart on that other picture, probably a misstep in showing a cabinet that was installed several years back versus a more recent installation.
I would echo Councilman Henn's suggestions that screening doesn't necessarily have to be landscape, and that this is the discretion of the city. I'm wondering too, do these have fans in them? Is there noise? Are they loud? Have we had experience being by them?
They do have fans to keep them cool, and it does qualify for the city ordinance for noise. It doesn't have...
They're powered,
Yeah,
and they do have cooling because of the electronic equipment inside them, but so they do have a
How do
cooling
they compare
system.
to an air conditioner in noise?
We don't have the data in front of us in terms of the decibels. I remember several years back when it was launched, I was told, think of an electric toothbrush.
Well, that's one thing, but some of these are really close to houses, so that would be something to find out for sure.
We will definitely inspect the noise level before any of these are installed. The other issue we wanted to get some info from council on is as far as how these are deployed, and as Mr. Heffernan mentioned, it would be done kind of on a piecemeal basis wherever it would be most practical as far as installation of the cabinet. And is that something that the council is comfortable with, the system possibly only being available in certain locations? Or would you like to see the system actually implemented on a broader scale?
What do we do with our other vendors? What do we do with Time Warner and whoever else we have?
Well, they're split now. They each serve a certain area of the city.
But I mean, when they get that franchise to do that, are they required to provide service to every single home?
I believe so.
Or can they select as well? I think we should treat all vendors the same as we would.
It makes sense. We'll have to see what our franchise requirements are for the other cable vendors.
My recollection is that universal service is not required by the law.
Yeah, there's actually some properties out behind Hogue that have nothing but AT&T access through the phone line. They have no, some of the medical offices there have no cable at all, and Cox and Time Warner are far away.
Okay. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with Councilman Henn. I think that they should be screened. Landscaping's not always appropriate, so if we can come up with some kind of architectural solution. I think your idea, if they did have a Apple-level cabinet design, that would be fine, but I've never seen one, and I'm guessing you're not going to design one for Newport Beach.
We could franchise it. We could make money off it.
Yeah, perhaps. And as far as the service goes, I think if we're going to get into this with them, that we ought to try and get it as broadly as possible. I mean, that's one of the complaints we've been receiving is there isn't a choice. And if we're going to let the service come into town, then we should get it to as many people as possible so that there is maximum choice of whether they go cable or go to a UVerse solution.
How do we anticipate the selection process of a site and then the notification process? Because having worked with certain communities in particular, they are extremely particular. And I can see all sorts of unhappy people because they are the lucky ones that have the cabinet close to them. So how are we going to handle all this? What is the thought? What's the procedure? How are we going to notify people and all that?
Well, the first thing is the new cabinets need to be within, and I believe you said 100 to 150 feet of the existing SAIs, so somewhere within a close proximity. And you saw on that map all those dots, that's where the existing SAIs are. So what we did, at least on the representative ones that we looked at with the AT&T folks, is we just went to each of those sites. I believe we went to 4 sites looked at where we thought, kind of collectively, the best location would be, so it wasn't affecting any individual home any more than any other. So we looked at trying to put them in between the homes, or if it's a one-sided street, on the opposite side of the street of the homes, or where it could be best landscaped. So we tried to just take all those things into consideration and determine where it would be located and what type of screening would be used at each location.
What is the staff looking for from the council other than what you've heard?
Actually, we'd be looking for if there's any insistence on your part that there's absolutely no case where we would, I'm going to try to avoid double negatives, that you're okay with us working on screening with them instead of automatic undergrounding. If there's no one who objects to us at least going down that path with AT&T to work on that.
Anyone nodding no? I think you have that.
Okay.
I still would like to see a nice, clean design.
I think it's a great idea, yeah, something that...
And we will be issuing permits for these on an individual basis, so we will have the opportunity to look at each individual site and make those determinations as to where we think the best location is, what the screening requirements are, and what fits at every different location. So we have a special, an individual encroachment permit for each location.
Okay. What other future action, if any, will the council be required to do to activate this?
Well, I think as part of a component of this, probably amending the municipal code related to how we handle the undergrounding and allowing for some type of screening, and that way you kind of see how it impacts everybody who's in a similar situated position, would probably be definitely a component of it.
Okay. Further council comments? Public comments from the public? Anybody like to come forth and make a comment?
Yes. Good afternoon, Council. My name is George Schroeder. I can tell you with absolute 100% certainty that the residents want this. Okay, we want an option. This isn't so much about TV, it's about broadband. All of us right now, we have to use our cable company for our broadband. We can try and use the DSL, which comes through the copper phone lines. You have to plug in an adapter, but that internet that you get through DSL, through a copper line, it's maybe 20% as quick as broadband. So basically, we're all locked into one broadband provider only. Quite a few of my tenants are switching over from the cable to direct TV, satellite TV, because of the cost, or they're not happy with the service, or they want to get the NFL package where they can watch all the games all the time with direct TV. But they're still having to keep the broadband through the cable provider. And I think that service now is about $75 a month. Okay, at least, I always have had a landline for 25 years in my home. It says AT&T. I get their advertisements. I've called them to see if I can get some broadband. I can't, because they say you have copper line coming to your house. You have to have fiber that comes to your house or within 300 feet of your house. Okay, so please work with them. And, I'm sure, people don't like more boxes. There will always be somebody to complain. I'm a real estate broker. When I have clients who move to Newport Beach from elsewhere, they had A&T fiber internet before. They're surprised that we don't have that here. We're behind the times. Thank you.
Thank you. That generates, I need to ask my question again. I mean, the one element that's not changing is it's still copper going to that house. So do all of these benefits get significantly shrunk before they get indoors?
I'm not sure what you meant by that last part about get shrunk. Can you expand on that?
Degradation of speed.
Right. With this service, the speed would increase, not degrade. So if they had, say, a DSL line today.
No, let's compare it to cable.
Oh, I see. Oh, I see.
Because you're actually going back to copper now, right?
Well, it's a single copper wire, dedicated wire to every house, and when it gets back to the node, then it goes fiber, which is, basically all the bandwidth you need. So it doesn't do what I think you're getting at with a coax network that the cable TV companies might use, where the traffic becomes...
Let me re-ask the question. Well, an individual house that has a copper wire going to it now for its telephone and has a cable going to it for its internet, when your service goes in, and it enters that house through that existing copper wire, how will it be in competition or in comparison to the cable that they have going in from Time Warner?
Right. I don't think I can give you just a general answer on that. We could, I could get back with you and go back and find out.
Was it going to be faster? Is it going to be slower? Is it going to be equal?
I think the answer to the question is it's based on the distance from the node to that residence. So what we call the loop length. So because there is degradation as you move out that 3,000 foot mark and the customer calls in, hey, I want the highest internet speed you have. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, you're eligible for, this speed. So it really depends where the cabinet's placed and how far that residence is. And that's the kind of, apples to apples comparison of what they currently get on cable, which is a shared network and can degrade when more people are on it versus a dedicated network. But we're only going to offer them the maximum what they're eligible for. So it really depends on the distance or that loop length from the cabinet to the residence.
And all things, they're really close, so we don't have to worry about being too far away. It will be as fast as cable, slower than cable, better than cable, all things considered nice and close. What? All three?
You're living close to one of those cabinets. It's at 45 megs, which, I don't know exactly what cable is offering, but we know that maybe at 3 a.m., if that's the only resident that's online, they might get those speeds, but ours is a dedicated connection.
Well, yeah, but your upload speed is quite a bit slower, though, isn't it, for people that need a fast upload? Than the fastest cable?
Yeah, I really don't know what cable is offering. I believe we're at 1.5 on the upstream.
Yeah, I think the cable goes up to like 7 or something like that.
On the upstream, yeah. So there's different offerings out there, but hopefully that answers the question. The speed that a resident is eligible for is ultimately based on their distance from the cabinet or from that fiber connection.
Okay. And back to staff again, I assume that there's no cost associated with this operation with respect to city?
No, the company would pay permit fees for all the costs associated with reviewing the plans and inspection of the installation and all that, so no costs. And then there would be some franchise fee revenue that would come in associated with the video service. Just one other thought, too. If the council was interested in seeing how these facilities are being sited and what the screening is being placed in around them, we could do the first grouping of them with them and then provide a follow-up report just to get some feedback that we're going in the right direction as far as how those are being cited.
I just have another question. You exist with your UVerse in other cities that are competing with cable.
Yes.
Do you have any sort of satisfaction information? I mean, I can see us putting in all these cabinets and everybody going, well, it's not as good as cable. And then we have all the cabinets and everybody's unhappy because we still have two main servers.
Yeah.
So I mean, do you have any data on that?
Well, I do. As I said earlier, when we launched in 2007, it was kind of some uncharted territory. By 2010, we were the leading service provider by the J.D. Powers and Associates firm, so in 3 of the 4 regions in the country. I'm not sure if anyone has seen the register today in the business section, but the cable companies struggle in terms of their service challenges and public perception.
When you say leading, do you mean leading in customer satisfaction? And if so, does that mean in terms of just overall or overall service when they make a phone call, or was it broken down in any way?
Yeah, the J.D. Powers and Associates award that I was referring to was for residential television service, because it was a new product for us, so we were proud of that.
It was customer satisfaction.
Correct.
All right,
The TV without the internet? Let's just say someone wanted to stay on cable for internet but go to UVerse for TV.
Yes, you can.
You can segregate it that way?
Yeah, you can get them all independently. You could get the internet only and keep your, if you have the Frisbee up on the side of the house, you can keep that.
Yeah, I think the real advantage of this is it gives different people with different needs different choices and options. All cable or all UVerse may not be your solution. It might be a combination of both.
Absolutely. Any further public comment?
Mayor Pro Tem Hill and members of the council. My name is Jim Mosier. As I've mentioned before when we were talking about undergrounding, I'm in an age of ever-increasing miniaturization of electronics. I am always amazed in the last decade of the ever-increasing proliferation of ever-increasing in size, rather than decreasing in size, boxes that we see along our city streets and in our intersections. I share Mayor Pro Tem Hill's concern that the design of these boxes has not necessarily been as well thought out as it might be, and I would, in addition, be skeptical about the claim that undergrounding is unfeasible or that this company has really given a rigorous engineering effort to seeing if it is feasible. As I understood the presentation, the climate-controlled vaults of immense dimensions are already there for some other purpose, and if I understood the answer to Councilman Petros's question, they have not thought about designing a box specifically, a vault for specifically one of these units. And I would even go further than that. I think it was Councilman Petros who mentioned that the traffic control boxes are of the dimensions they are largely because of some regulation we have from outside, and the boxes inside are largely empty. So I would want some assurance that this box actually is the smallest size feasible, number one, and number two, as is the trend, as things get smaller, there would be some commitment that the size would be reduced when it was feasible to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Final call? All right, thank you. And we will move on to public comments. Madam Clerk?
Public comments are invited on study session and regular meeting agenda items, closed session items, and non-agenda items generally considered to be within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes. Before speaking, please state your name for the record.
Anyone with public comments?
Thank you, Mayor Curry. My name again is Jim Mosier. Regarding the closed session, one of the items which I think the city attorney will announce in a moment is the Banning Ranch litigation. And with regard to that, I believe the city has an agreement whereby we are to be indemnified by the developer. So I was hoping we could have some assurance that the city itself is not using any taxpayer money for our involvement in that lawsuit. Second, the third item on the closed session is the job performance evaluation of the city attorney. And I always find it unfortunate that you choose to hold these evaluations entirely behind closed doors, because I assume that as a part of the evaluation you set performance goals, and the public in general has no idea what those goals are or whether they have been met. As the minutes of the last meeting reflect, however, in advance of this evaluation, the mayor praised the city attorney for managing his office well enough to end the last fiscal year $377,634 under budget. That is commendable, but I would like to ask where the public in general can see the report that the mayor was referring to. I looked on the city website and could not find that. I would also like to remind the council that the people of Newport Beach, in writing the city charter, whatever cost savings have been achieved, never imagined an office with 4 attorneys and 3 assistants. Instead, in the charter, they requested that you appoint a single city attorney who, if he needed additional help, would go to you, and you would make the decision publicly, I assume, regarding each additional contract needed. I'm not sure entirely why we have drifted away from that model that is still used in many other cities. But I need to cut this short because I really want to talk to you about the Public Records Act. A couple of years ago, Councilwoman Daigle made a wonderful suggestion to make the city's contracts visible on the city's website as they were issued. And I would like to make a similar suggestion for Public Records Act requests. I assume that each request is itself by definition a public record, and my understanding is that once documents are offered in response, they are automatically available to everyone else. So I would suggest that the requests be publicly posted on the city website as they're received, and the responses be posted, and links to any documents that are provided. A kind of city questions and answers page. I think this would be technologically easy. It would avoid staff needing to respond to duplicate requests for the same items. It would be very beneficial to our residents, and it would place us in a higher tier of transparency than any other Orange County city. I hope you will consider putting this on a future agenda for direction to staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Please come forward. All right, seeing none, we will adjourn to closed session. We will reconvene at 7 o'clock.